I never thought my marriage would end up on the bargaining table like a business deal. When I married Daniel, it wasn't because of his family's wealth or their name, but because of the way he made me laugh, the way he held my hand when I was scared, and the way he told me, as long as we're together, nothing else matters. But love alone wasn't enough for his mother, Mrs. Grace Mensa, a woman everyone in Accra knew for her cold, calculating ways. She ran the family's shipping business with an iron fist, and from the very beginning, she made it clear she didn't think I belonged in their world. I was just a simple woman from Kumasi, raised by a single father who worked at a mechanic shop. I didn't have a university degree or a fancy background. I was a primary school teacher when I met Daniel at a friend's wedding. He didn't care about my background, but his mother, oh, she cared more than anyone could imagine. The first year of our marriage was blissful, though marred by subtle tension whenever we visited his family home. His mother would make snide remarks about my lack of ambition or humble upbringing. Daniel always defended me, but I could see the battle it caused between them. Things took a turn one humid afternoon when she invited me to the family estate alone. When I arrived, she was sitting on the veranda, sipping tea like a queen waiting for her subject. "Sit, Anita," she said, not looking at me directly. I sat across from her, feeling the weight of her gaze when she finally met my eyes. "You love my son, I know," she began smoothly. "But love doesn't put food on the table. Love doesn't secure a legacy. Daniel has responsibilities you can't understand." My stomach tightened. "With all due respect, Ma, Daniel and I are building our own life together. We don't need..." She raised her hand sharply. "You don't need what? My help? My connections? Do you think my son will remain happy when he realizes what he's sacrificed for you?" Her words stung. Daniel had already turned down a role in the family business to pursue his own architecture firm. He wanted freedom, and I supported him. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Leave him, Anita. Walk away before he throws his future away completely. I'm prepared to make it worth your while." I stared at her, confused. "What are you saying?" She reached into her bag and placed a brown envelope on the table between us. I didn't have to open it to know what was inside. "Take this money, disappear, and let Daniel believe you left him for someone else. I'll make sure you're comfortable for the rest of your life. He will be hurt at first, but eventually, he'll come to his senses and fulfill his destiny." My mouth went dry. This was madness. "You're asking me to destroy my marriage," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm asking you to save my son's future," she corrected. That night, I didn't tell Daniel about the meeting. I couldn't. He had been so excited about the new project he was working on, and I didn't want to burden him. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop thinking about the envelope. 2 million cedis. That's how much my mother-in-law thought my love for Daniel was worth. I considered throwing it back in her face. I considered telling Daniel everything. But then my mind wandered to my father, whose health had been declining for years. The medical bills were piling up, and my meager salary couldn't cover them. It felt like a devil's bargain, one that could either ruin me or save my father's life. For days, I avoided my mother-in-law's calls. Daniel noticed my unease and asked repeatedly what was wrong, but I brushed him off. Then, a week later, my father collapsed. The hospital told me he needed urgent surgery, something that would cost far more than I could afford. That night, as I sat by his bedside, watching his chest rise and fall, I made the most painful decision of my life. I would take the money. The next morning, I left a note for Daniel on the kitchen table. It was short and cruel, every word stabbing me as I wrote it. "Daniel, I'm sorry. I've fallen out of love with you. I need more than this life can give me, and I've met someone who can provide that. Please don't look for me." I packed a small bag, left my wedding ring beside the note, and disappeared. The plan was simple. I would stay with a friend in another city until things calmed down. My mother-in-law assured me she would handle Daniel's heartbreak and eventually guide him back to the path she had always envisioned. The first few weeks were hell. Daniel called me hundreds of times, his messages going from confusion to anger to desperation. "Anita, please, just tell me why. Was it something I did? Who is he? Tell me who he is." Each message tore me apart, but I didn't respond. When my father's surgery was successful, I tried to comfort myself with the thought that at least my sacrifice wasn't in vain. But deep inside, guilt gnawed at me like a relentless beast. Months passed. Then, one evening, while I was at my friend's place, a news alert popped up on TV. Daniel's face filled the screen. "Tragedy has struck the Mensa family business," the reporter said. "A fire has destroyed one of their shipping warehouses, resulting in significant financial loss." Rumors of internal conflict have been circulating, with some sources claiming that the company is on the verge of collapse. My heart sank. This wasn't part of the plan. The next day, I couldn't resist calling Daniel from a blocked number. His voice was broken, almost unrecognizable. "Anita? Is that you?" I froze, unable to speak. "Everything's falling apart," he said, his words tumbling out. "My mother, she pushed me into taking over the company after you left. I never wanted this, Anita. And now it's all burning down. I can't fix it. I can't," his voice cracked. I hung up, tears streaming down my face. It was then I realized the horrible truth: by leaving Daniel, I had played right into his mother's hands. And now, the very future she fought so hard to secure was crumbling. I decided to return to Accra. I couldn't hide anymore. When I arrived at the Mensa estate, it was a different world. The once manicured gardens were overgrown, and the house that had always seemed so imposing now looked tired and faded. I found Mrs. Mensa sitting in the same spot where she had offered me the envelope months earlier. This time, there was no tea, no calm superiority. She looked haggard, her eyes sunken with worry. "You came back," she said, her voice hoarse. "What happened?" I demanded. She laughed bitterly. "What always happens when you try to control people's lives? It falls apart. Daniel wasn't ready to run the business. I thought I could manipulate him into becoming the man I wanted him to be. But without you," she trailed off, shaking her head. "He's been drowning." My chest ached. "Where is he now?" Her eyes filled with tears. "At the hospital. He tried to take his own life last night." The room spun around me. As I raced to the hospital, one thought consumed me: I had traded my marriage for money, my love for survival. And now, everything, Daniel's happiness, his family's empire, even his will to live, was in ruins. When I saw him lying unconscious, tubes attached to his body, I broke down completely. I whispered through my sobs, "I'm here, Daniel. I never stopped loving you. I'm so sorry." But I didn't know if he could hear me. At that moment, I realized the terrifying cost of our choices: his mother's ambition, my desperation, and our silence. The very plan meant to secure our future had instead destroyed us all. Daniel's condition was fragile. The doctor said he had swallowed a dangerous amount of pills, and if he had been found even an hour later, he wouldn't have survived. I sat by his bedside for hours, holding his hand and praying he would wake up. Each beep of the heart monitor felt like a ticking clock counting down to the moment I would have to face the full weight of my choices. Mrs. Mensa arrived at the hospital later that evening. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked small and broken, her usual commanding presence reduced to a trembling shadow. Is he going to make it?" she asked, her voice cracking. "The doctors say he's stable for now," I replied coldly. I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. Not after everything she had done. She sat down heavily in the chair opposite me, clutching her shawl like a lifeline. "I thought I was doing what was best for him," she whispered. "I thought if you left, he would finally see reason and focus on the business. I never imagined it would drive him to this. I turned to her, my voice sharp with anger. You didn't just ruin him, Ma. You ruined us. You forced me into a corner and made me choose between my father's life and my marriage. You manipulated everyone. Her eyes widened. I never forced you. Yes, you did. I shouted, my chest heaving. You handed me that envelope knowing exactly what kind of position I was in. You used my pain, my father's illness, to break us apart. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered, I just wanted to protect my son. Protect him? I laughed bitterly. You destroyed him. And now look where we are. The next morning, Daniel finally opened his eyes. Anita? His voice was weak, but it was enough to make me burst into tears. Yes, love, I'm here, I sobbed, clutching his hand. Confusion clouded his face. I thought you left me, for someone else. I swallowed hard. This was the moment I had dreaded. I never left you for another man, Daniel. I left because your mother paid me to. His eyes widened in shock. What? I didn't want to, I rushed to explain, my words tumbling out in a desperate flood. But my father needed surgery. The hospital bills were more than I could handle. She told me it was the only way to save his life. I thought if I left, you'd hate me and move on. I thought at least one of us would be okay. Daniel's breathing quickened, his chest rising and falling rapidly. So everything, all this pain, was because of her? Yes, I whispered. And because I said yes. His mother stepped forward, wringing her hands. Daniel, please listen. I thought I was doing what was best for you, for the family business. I didn't want you to throw everything away. Daniel's gaze burned with fury. You didn't care about me, Ma. You cared about control. You wanted to shape my life to fit your plans, and now look at what's happened. The room fell silent except for the steady beep of the monitor. Finally, Daniel turned to me, his eyes filled with hurt and betrayal. I don't know if I can forgive either of you, he said hoarsely. But I need time. As he drifted back to sleep, I realized the road ahead would be long and uncertain. The truth was out now, and there was no undoing the damage. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The family's empire was collapsing, and the secrets we'd kept hidden for so long were about to rise to the surface. The following days at the hospital were tense and filled with silence. Daniel barely spoke to either of us. He was polite to the doctors and nurses but cold and distant whenever his mother or I tried to engage him. Mrs. Mensah spent her time pacing the corridors, her phone glued to her ear as she tried to salvage what was left of the family business. But the more she tried, the clearer it became that the empire she'd built on control and manipulation was crumbling fast. I focused on Daniel, helping him eat, sit up, and walk short distances, but I could feel the walls between us. The warmth and laughter we once shared had been replaced with suspicion and pain. One evening, after the doctor confirmed that Daniel would be discharged soon, he asked to speak to both of us in private. We gathered in his hospital room, the air thick with unspoken tension. Daniel sat on the bed, his face pale but determined. I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, he began quietly. And I realized something. For years, I've been living under other people's expectations. Ma, you wanted me to take over the company. Anita, you wanted us to have a simple, happy life away from all that chaos. But no one ever asked what I wanted. Mrs. Mensah's lips trembled. Son, I just wanted you to succeed. No, Daniel cut her off sharply. You wanted me to succeed your way. You thought you could buy and control everyone, even Anita. And you, he said, turning to me, his voice softer but still laced with hurt, you made a choice for me instead of trusting me to face it with you. Tears filled my eyes. Daniel, I was scared. I thought I was protecting you. He shook his head. And that's the problem. Everyone's been making decisions for me, and I've been too afraid to fight back. Daniel took a deep breath before continuing. I'm done living like this. When I leave this hospital, I'm walking away from all of it, the company, the money, the endless battles. I'm going to start over somewhere new. Alone. His words hit me like a physical blow. Alone? I whispered, my voice breaking. Yes, Anita. I need time to heal, to figure out who I am without all this noise. I love you, but I can't pretend things are the same. Not after this. Mrs. Mensah gasped. Daniel, you can't abandon the company. It's our family legacy. Legacy? Daniel gave a bitter laugh. What good is a legacy built on lies and broken hearts? You wanted control so badly, Ma. Well, now you can have it, alone. Mrs. Mensah sank into a chair, her face pale as the weight of his words crushed her spirit. When we left the hospital, Daniel didn't come home with either of us. He packed a small bag and got into a taxi without looking back. I watched him drive away, my heart shattering, knowing I might never see him again. Mrs. Mensah stood beside me, silent and trembling. For the first time, I saw her not as a powerful matriarch but as a lonely woman who had lost everything, her son, her business, her grip on the future. Weeks later, I received a letter from Daniel. He wrote that he was living in a quiet coastal town, far from Accra, working as an architect on small community projects. He didn't know if he was ready to forgive me or his mother, but he hoped that one day, all three of us could rebuild, not as a perfect family, but as people who had learned from their mistakes. I folded the letter with trembling hands, tears blurring my vision. In the end, no one truly won. The money was gone, the business was in ruins, and our love had been scarred beyond recognition. But maybe, just maybe, there was still hope, a fragile seed that could grow if we ever found the courage to nurture it. And I finally understood the lesson hidden beneath all the pain. When you try to control love and destiny, you don't just lose others, you lose yourself.